Hey, this is Ty,
And I'm Joe.
and we're two Black educators living in Boston and seeking Black excellence.
We started 2B because we thought, why can't we get together, have fun, and learn all at the same time? And it turns out you can, and we'll prove it.
That's right. Can you believe it's April 30th, 2020? Man, the days are just running together. But anyway, let's get this started. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe and follow us at 2B Podcast on all social media platforms. And thank you for tuning in if you're streaming live on YouTube or Facebook.
Absolutely. So we are partnering with E4E as we have for the past 4 podcasts. And the reason we've done that is because we think we all want to be educators for excellence. And during these times, we're still trying to figure out how, and it really does take a community effort. Every day in the month of May, which, if you can believe it, starts tomorrow, E4E will be highlighting an exemplary educator in the city of Boston. So we want to engage the community in voicing who they think should be nominated and represented. So please complete this survey.
Yes, May is Teacher Appreciation Month too, so we'll talk more about that later. And E4E also strives to bring teacher voices to the forefront, especially in regards to educational activism. That's part of what makes them really awesome. If you're interested in doing this work in the form of an op-ed, I think I'm working on a little something, a video blog or some other way, please complete the survey or type yes in the chat box. Or even if you're not listening to this live, just send an email to jresiteris@e4e.org.
Absolutely. So before we dive right in, as always, we want to make sure that we take a moment to be mindful. And today's quote comes from the late, great Dorothy West. Dorothy West is a Black novelist, and she says, "To know how much there is to know is the beginning of learning to live."
Okay.
And I was moved by that. And I want to know, what have you learned this week? Or what are you learning to be mindful of that is helping you learn to live?
Man, so many thoughts about that. One of the things that I think I've really learned is that you have to find ways to be productive during this time, during this downtime. I started to get that boredom feeling, even with so many things going on, the lack of structure that I have, from day to day. Some days I'm up till 4 a.m. Some days it seems like I go to sleep at 4 p.m. Who knows, right? But I've learned that, there's a lot to learn in regards to keeping structure and organization in your life. And, there's nothing wrong with having those things in place. So I think too many of us think we like to be recluse and just be hanging out, doing things, doing whatever we want all the time. And in actuality, we do appreciate structure and organization.
Absolutely. Mine is more of an emotional thing that I've learned, and that is everyone isn't going to affirm or validate your efforts, and stay close to those who do. That is what I've been mindful of and thinking about this week. As you just traverse and you realize, oh, that didn't happen the way I thought it was. So just realizing that there are some people in your life who are going to affirm and validate your efforts, and others who just aren't. And that's okay. Cling close to the ones that see your greatness.
Indeed.
So, Ty, you've been saying this for quite some time.
Okay.
People are itching to get back out. Warm weather is coming. And
everywhere but Boston, apparently.
I'm not gonna lie, that's why I'm like, oh my goodness, it is dreary.
You see, I brought my tea out this week. I had to bring my tea out. Usually I'm sipping water, but today I had to bring my tea out.
What flavor tea are you?
I think this is peach hibiscus. I'm not really sure. I just go with what's ever in the cabinet, to be honest. I'm not really too picky about it.
Wife sucks the tea?
She does indeed. No sugar, just a little tea bag and a little water, and I'm all set.
I feel that. It's good for the voice too.
It is. I'm a vocalist. I'm one of the voices. Shout out to that. To anybody that knows that reference, that movie.
Oh my goodness. So it's around the corner. Warm weather in other places, apparently, than Boston is coming. And the quarantine fatigue is real.
Mm.
States are reopening.
Uh-huh.
And this is not kind of reopening. States are truly reopening. Here is what it looks like. These states in the dark green have reopened. The states in the light green are about to reopen, and the yellow is we're still closed. So how are you feeling about this?
Well, to be honest, I saw it coming. I would say to anybody that would listen, when I had conversations with coworkers, friends, family members, that I knew this quarantine period could only really be truly effective for a short amount of time. And that's simply because people were itching to get out there and do anything, right? There are some people that have business interests and their businesses have lost money. They're eager to reopen as a source of income. There are others that simply are it's just hard for them to sit still for this amount of time. And if you really think about it, at least for Massachusetts, our Governor Baker, came out yesterday and extended the stay-at-home order until May 18th. By the time we get to May 18th, that would have been 3 entire months that the state of Massachusetts would have been quarantined. So you think about that, and you just think to yourself, at any other point, have you stayed in the house for that amount of time? The answer is more than likely no. And it's just a matter of time before people say, all right, enough is enough. I'm ready to go outside. I'm ready to be out in the open. But I think also people are doing it with precautions.
Do you?
I think so. So I've gone out a decent amount in the last week or two. And at least in this area, I do see a lot of people wearing masks. I see some people still wearing gloves. And I know that's controversial. But and I do, especially the trips I've had to the grocery store, people are trying to keep their distance and be mindful of that. So I do believe that people are doing it with precaution. And then, there are some folks that are just like, COVID-19 is not real. It's a government conspiracy. The doctors and scientists are lying and exaggerating the impact. There's that camp too. I'm not one of those. I do believe it's real. But I understand that we've come to a time frame where folks are saying, all right, it's time to break loose. Let me out.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings because I believe it was Hong Kong that reopened and they experienced like a second spike in positive cases. And I'm just like, okay, what's worse? Like, I think when you think about goal setting, you think about like short-term goals and satisfaction versus long-term goals and satisfactions. And I'm like, what is it that we want? Do we want the long-term goal of being able to like go out, or do we want to be able to go out and then have to do this for another additional 3 months? Like at some point, it's like, just maybe if we all just stay home, it'll like go away and then we can really, really go out. And I just think that it's happening a little too soon. I think it's happening a little too soon and a little bit too quickly. Like, some of the things that they're reopening, I'm like, nail salons, barbers, like what? How do you social distance at your barber?
I mean, listen, I'm not wearing this band for no reason. Let me tell you something. It's a dual purpose band. And I'll explain the second half of that later on. But I miss my barber. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been texting them late at night like, man, I miss you, dog. You know what I mean? I'm just playing, but still, I know that I think that we do need to be cautious of what businesses open and when. And some of the things that people are deeming as essential don't really seem essential. What I will say is this, though, and I've said this to a lot of folks as well, is that we have to be cognizant, especially me and you, Joe, we're in the Northeast and in the Boston area, that the experience is vastly different depending on where you are in the country. And I have family and friends that are in different parts of the country, in the Midwest, in the South, in Florida, and they're just not seeing the same experience or having the same experience that we are. So I know quite a few nurses, and to be honest, half of them say their hospitals are packed and they're, full gear PPE every day to a point where they're nervous about coming home to their loved ones and passing on the virus if they contracted it at work. And then there are others that are saying that, their hospitals are empty because folks are staying home and that they've even cut back hours. So the experience is very different depending on where you are. And I think we have to keep that in mind too when we sort of look at other states and what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that document from New York Times is up to date as of yesterday. And the authors, Sarah, Jasmine, Lazaro, and Nadia, are doing an excellent job. And the cool thing is, you can see the trends of some of these states. No, not some. Every single one of the states that have opened. And they're categorized under whether they are open, restricted, or about to open. And the truth is, a lot of these states that are starting to open, their cases aren't that low. You actually see some states that are opening, to me, they haven't started that downward trend, and you're reopening for what? Why? That to me doesn't make sense.
Business, commerce, habit. I think those are some of the reasons that people are citing.
Fair. And, again, some people believe that is more important than life. And so is life. If you live in those states.
There are also some people, and I am sympathetic to this, that believe that the longer we stay quarantined and the stay-at-home orders continue on, that folks that are having mental health issues, they're not getting the services that they need, and that possibly the issues are festering as they sit at home. There's unfortunately been a lot of memes, and negatively so, that talk about divorce lawyers are prepping for their time to come because of all the, unfortunate issues that have come up in marriages, as people have, couples have sat at home for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And I think that I hear that. So I'm not saying everybody go run outside at this moment, but I do understand people's desire to get out there and just sort of try to get back to some sort of normal that we were used to. Not the same, but something close to it.
Right. Lauren Gooden says telehealth appointments. Like many people, many doctors are providing social, their mental health checks via telehealth appointments. So the truth is, I'm not saying they're not overbooked, but you can still meet with your healthcare professional via telehealth, and Florida is set to open up for elective surgeries. And I'm just like, who wants to be in the hospital right now? I'm just...
First, I would say, I think that was a great comment by Lauren. For some folks, they do have that option. I think for others, that's not an option for them based on, a lack of access, possibly in terms of their technology access, in regards to their health insurance and what may or may not have been covered. And a lot of people, they rely on community programming that may not be available to them at this time because they weren't able to make that shift into a virtual space right away. So that's still a good answer, but I don't know. I know I'm not going to the hospital. I'm staying at home and going out for the essentials, but I am getting antsy too. So I hear it from both sides.
No, I agree. It's that access point again, like your point stands. So this obviously reopening means that there's a lot of talk about reopening schools. And so the CDC and FEMA have worked to get plans in Trump's hands by tomorrow. And they're saying reopenings are going to happen in about 3 stages. And the first priority, according to the CDC documents, is to reopen community settings where children are cared for, including K through 12 schools, daycares, and locally attended summer camps to allow the workforce to return to work. And in the areas of moderate mitigation, aka controlled recovery, schools would remain open with enhanced distancing measures.
Well,
what do you think?
My response to that is, okay. That is my response, literally. And I saw this, I'm glad you put up on the screen. I saw this screenshot posted in a various number of places. A really good discussion and thread was in the Black Educators Rock Facebook group. So if you're not a part of that and you're a Black educator, definitely search that out. That's Black Educators Rock on Facebook. And I think the best response was, clearly these guidelines were not written by teachers. They just couldn't have been, because you would immediately understand that logistically, this just does not make sense. And I think, one of the things we're going to talk about again, we're talking about inequities in this episode, is depending on what district, what school, what classroom, you're in and what subject you're teaching, some teachers have 30, 35, 40, 50 kids in the classroom. It really depends on, where you are. And if that's the case, I mean, are we providing more rooms? Are we going to set up trailers outside of the schools? Where are we going to fit all these kids for them to be 6 feet apart in the classroom? It's just not available. I mean, maybe we're holding classroom and we're holding class in the hallway. I don't know. I'm ready to hear from the CDC because I haven't figured that part out. Because immediately I said, this will not work. This will not work.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. I looked at that and laughed, and I commented and said, I wonder where they'll roll this out first, because we all know who the testers of these novel ideas tend to be. And I said, protect our Black and brown children. Like, I am not here for this. No, until it is safe. And I don't mean starting to gain control. I mean, until it is truly safe for our students, we should not even be considering these options at all. But in that chat that you mentioned, there was an educator who mentioned this is a good time to test hybrid learning solutions. And I do think that is a great perspective moving forward. But the thought of schools reopening, speaking of mental health, what do you think that's going to do for our students' mental health? Like, not knowing that if they're safe, knowing that you've been telling me to social distance and now I'm in school. Oh, I have to eat in the classroom.
I think that we like to think that our students are resilient, and I believe that. But at the same time, I think as the adults in the room, we need to be able to protect them because since they are still growing in adolescence, they need to have somebody that's going to fight for them and advocate for them. And in this case, I hope that not only the staff, but especially the parents. Parents, I'm talking to you right now. This is opportunity for you to really come out and speak your mind. Write the letters, to your local government. Write letters to the administration at your school. Talk to the school council, a school committee, and the city council in your local areas, and let them know that you're not here for it. Because ultimately, if the parents stand up and say, I'm not sending my child back to school, then that will speak volumes. Because our students, I know, I've spoken to many of them, and they've all talked about, feeling a level of anxiety that many of them have never felt before, living through these uncertain times, not knowing about what's going to happen in regards to graduation, in regards to their grades. Some of them still worrying about AP tests, which is another story in itself. Others that were stressing about statewide testing before those were finally canceled. The anxiety level of many of our students have gone through the roof. And right along with them have the staff members. The teachers are just as anxious and as stressed trying to juggle it all in this time. And for some reason, I guess when you elevate to these positions, and I'll just be frank, when you get to these positions beyond the school, sometimes you lose touch. And I think that when you see things like what the CDC said, you realize somehow when we came up with these guidelines, we weren't spending time in the classroom or in the school hallways when we thought that this would make sense. I
agree. Amnesia. You walk out the door and then it's like, oh, this is what they need. How? Like who taught you that?
I'm not really sure.
Oh my goodness.
Who taught you that?
Oh my goodness. So I was reading an awesome article. I encourage all of you to read it. It is by the Harvard Gazette, and they did an interview with the former Secretary of Education for Massachusetts, Paul Reville.
Okay.
And it's actually great. It's an easy read. He is so eloquent in his responses. And it just touches. I don't think I read anything I disagreed with. He says, children come from very different backgrounds and have very different resources, opportunities, and support outside of school. Now that their entire learning lives, as well as their actual physical lives, are outside of school, those differences and disparities come into vivid view. What is the biggest inequality you've seen?
I think the first one that comes to mind is probably the easiest to grab hold of and understand is in terms of technology. right? And the ability to have access to technology, and more so than just giving students laptops. I think that some people think that's the problem. So we'll just get more laptops. We'll just throw laptops at students, and that'll fix it. And if you really think about it, that's not really going to fix anything. That's not even a stopgap. Especially when you have some districts within the same state, within the same area, right next to each other, where there are students that have one-to-one laptops. And what I mean by that is they have
Mm.
laptops they take to school and take home with them. And they've been doing this. So this was not necessarily a huge transition for them to go to online learning, because they've had those laptops throughout the school year and even possibly years before. And when you give students a tool, if you don't give them the instructions, what good is the tool, right? So many of our students, they've gotten this laptop. This is the first time that they've had consistent access to a laptop, to a tablet. That doesn't ensure that they know how to use it. And I think sometimes we
Absolutely.
get confused with Generation Z, and we like to think of them as growing up in a digital age. But the way that they use their phones is not the same way that you would expect them to use a laptop, let's say for educational purposes. So there's a disconnect there, and I think that that's probably the biggest inequity that I've seen in an immediate sense, is just not the same access to technology when we think about making this transition to distance learning.
Agreed. Agreed. And I second that, and then push that the inequities, just seeing who has what resources within the district. I feel like every district, yes, we're in BPS, but I feel like if you go across districts, you just see the haves and the have-nots. Like within the same district, you have severe striations of who has had one-to-ones, who understands how to use technology for educational purposes, and then
Mm.
moving forth from there. What is happening to our special needs students? What how are they getting their needs met?
They're not. I mean, if we're being frank, they're not. Simple and plain, they're not having their needs met. I know that there are some teachers, you included, as a special education teacher, that are taking strides to try to accommodate students and meet their needs, provide them with their services. But in actuality, their services are not being provided on a consistent basis. And if we're being honest, a lot of times, even when we're in the physical school, they weren't being met in the way that their program is supposed to be laid out. And Joe, I know you can speak more to that because it's something you go through every day.
It is. And I mean, again, I just think that it's the divvying of money and resources. Every school doesn't have the same percentages. So one social worker may not cut it for certain schools. One counselor, one guidance counselor may not cut it for certain schools. If you're gonna pile on the needs and the severity of those needs, then you need to provide the resources as well. And that it's just coming out even now that it's like, nope, don't matter.
What's baffling to me to that point is, no matter how many studies are released that say that, there's a certain demographic of students based on their race, based on their cultural background, their socioeconomic status, that they need more services, somehow more money still goes to students or schools that don't need as many services. How that happens, I'm still
And
trying
then
to
they're
figure
like,
that part
hey,
out.
you're not performing. Hey,
Right.
have you removed the barriers? Again, it's just like, it just shows that a certain subset of the population is experiencing more barriers to learning than other people.
I think when we first discussed talking about inequities in education, um, what I really thought to myself, and this is sort of the mindset that I'm in now, is as I see things unfolding, and I hear I talk to my students, and I hear from other educators about how their students are not being provided with quality access. More importantly, the parents haven't been given anything in regards to a resource to help their child during this time, even though they've become parent and teacher. We haven't done enough to reach out to the parents. But I think about the fact that I think we're going to be transitioning very soon from a health crisis in COVID-19 to an educational crisis.
Oh man.
I really believe that. I think that's what's on the horizon. Whether we go back to school in the fall or beginning of 2021, I believe it's going to be an educational crisis because the learning gaps are going to be tremendous. And it's going to be even more clear the inequities that were pre-existing before this pandemic, based on the fact that many of our students were not cared for during this time in the way that they should have been.
Right. And I think those inequities stem past just the house to what resources do the parents have? to care for their students? Do they have the money for tutors? There are some who won't experience this because they have the luxury of having the resources to be able to still continue to make educational gains.
You know what else we have to keep in mind, because that's a great point, is for many parents, especially those parents of students that are living in poverty. Many of those parents that were not provided with a quality education themselves, right? And now that you become the teacher, how then can you help educate your child when there are parts of your education that has gaps? And we can't sit here and blame them. We have to find solutions. And that's why I said that one of the things that I think that really needs to be done is we need to provide more resources to parents, because we're asking a lot of our students to keep the same motivation level, to deal with the uncertainty of this time. For some of them, their home life is chaotic. And if we're not providing any solutions for their parents, then we're basically putting them in a no-win situation.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you saw this comment here, but Savannah says, are all of our students life students now? And I believe, and it may be slightly off, but it's semi-limited or interrupted formal education, I believe is what SLIFE stands for. So, I mean, kind of, I guess so. Like, they will have had, I would consider this to be an interruption of like formal education, or at least a limited amount of formal education. And what we do know about SLIFE programs is that they require special care as well to combat these things. So actually, that is a great question. But we can't think about just the problems. This also can be a reset button. This could be a time that we say, hey, this is how things were. And now, because of all of this, no one's in school, no one's doing certain things. When we go back, let's not waste this, right? Never lose the opportunity of a crisis. And in this situation, we don't want to frantically struggle to restore the status quo, because the status quo wasn't operating at an effective level and certainly wasn't serving all of our students fairly. That is Revel. So when we go back, what is the status quo that you were saying? No, this is where I draw the line. We are not returning back to this.
For one, I think it starts on a policy level. I think that we have to demand that our policymakers provide an equal amount of funding. And let me actually take that back. I don't actually believe it should be equal. I think that we need to provide the proper amount of funding based on the situation that each and every school is actually in. And I think that too often policymakers, they make these broad stroke remedies. And for some, yes, it's a positive, but for many others, it's a negative, or it simply does not address the issues that they're facing. And I think that we really need to force our policymakers to look at each and every school within their district and say, okay, what does this school specifically need? Provide that school with those needs, whether it's more counselors, more social workers, more teachers, more paras, if it's different technology that needs to be provided, and provide that to that school, because I don't expect that each school is going to look the same. There's no cookie cutter approach to education.
No, I agree with that. Stop the cookie cutters. Stop it. I agree 100%. And give schools what they need. It's not equality, it's equity. Everybody doesn't need the same thing. For me, I want us to hire more teachers and have smaller classes. This, like you said, this is going to widen that educational gap. And ultimately, what the kids are going to need is an individualized plan of one-to-one of work with their teacher. They're going to need that more. And in a classroom of 30 kids, it's just not possible. It's just not possible. I want to see us have the
Mm-hmm.
resources to be able to fund smaller classrooms,
Mm.
especially in our high needs areas and high needs populations. Generally speaking, are Black and brown schools and Black and brown students. I want to see how we are going to recap that loss and push them back forward. And I really think that requires us to have the ability to meet them where they are. And in order to meet them where they are, we need to be able to sit and share in time with them, share class with them, not be, okay, yeah, you're good, okay, and running to the next person because there's 30 and 1. Those ratios don't work. Those ratios don't work. I've always said the ratio for field trips is 1 to 10. Why should the ratio for teaching be any higher?
Mm. Mm. You said something right there. You said something right there. Because if they entrust you, they being the higher ups entrust you to be able to care for 10 children outside of the building, how is it that they triple that, double that, right? In some cases, who knows? And entrust you to take care of 30 students and not just watch over them, but also provide them with a quality education, provide them with thought-provoking curriculum, teach them skills all at the same time. Oh, and do it in 45, 60 minutes for most teachers. So I agree. You said something right there. Here's an analogy. I want you to follow me on this. This is what I'm thinking about. As I've been watching the news consistently, especially hearing from the healthcare field, many of our healthcare workers, doctors and nurses, they are saying, especially in the very beginning of this outbreak, that they did not have the proper protective equipment, PPE. And for them to do their job adequately, they needed that PPE. And I know that there was a lot of back and forth between our president and states and trying to figure out who was going to fund it, where it was going to come from, how are we going to protect our healthcare workers. And I think that in the same way for our students are like the healthcare workers, right? But they also need to be protected during this time. So how do we protect them? What equipment do they need so that they feel protected, and then they can open their minds to be able to do their job, which is to learn. So I really think that this is a time, again, we've said it before, to create a new normal. Class sizes is one thing. I think lowering class sizes is huge. The other thing that I really consider is we need to now really look at the curriculum, because if it wasn't clear before, we have so many students that have IEPs, 504 plans, they have other accommodations, and then somehow at the end of the day, we all take the same test. So let me get this straight. You want me to teach him one way, her one way, him another way, provide this person with different services, and in the end, we're all going to take the same test. Okay. And if that is not, I think that issue is exacerbated now, because certainly during distance learning, the curriculum is all over the place, right? Students are learning in so many different ways. Teachers are trying to make ends meet, if you will, with what they have at their disposal. And so at the end of this, you can very much expect that even within schools, even within grade levels, that students got a wide variety of teaching, right? The things that they were presented is going to be completely different across the board. So then you can't come out later on, let's say next year, in each state and say, all right, we're still giving the same blanket test, even though we know for a fact that from student to student, class to class, teacher to teacher, they were presented with different material. You can't do it. Not in any equitable way.
Oh my goodness. And I guess my third one, but before I get to the third one, yes, like to the curriculum, to the test, like, and also to the curriculum point, can our kids see themselves in the curriculum, please? Oh. Like, can we get some culturally relevant curriculum? Like, I don't understand why that's so hard to ask. And I don't want to be a slave either, like, or not have a daddy. Like, I want to be a queen because I am, and you are a king. Like, why can't we have some curriculum that acknowledges and uplifts us and talks about how powerful we are and the ancestors that we came from? So that's, I won't go further than that. But in addition to the
you went deep in your cultural bag right there. You went deep in that cultural bag. We're going to touch on that more. Trust me, those episodes are coming soon. Coming soon.
Oh my goodness. But that, like, hearing you say curriculum, just, immediately, that's where I go. Because yes, the test is inequitable. And also, why is it so hard to garner interest? I'm not interested in this, even as an adult. Like, I think of some of the things I struggle with. I don't want to read something that's like never about me, ever.
I
Like,
think as
or boring and I can't relate to.
I think as educators, we have to look in the mirror and really do some introspective thinking. And a lot of times it does require more work because it is not the status quo, and we're breaking away from those old molds that have been in place for years on end. But we have to really say, are we doing this for us or for the students?
Woo!
We should be considering that in everything that we do, but in particular the curriculum. Because in regards to curriculum, if it's a story that resonates with you and you're 20, 30 years older than your student body, and you're maybe different race, different gender, and all the stories are relatable to you, chances are they're probably not that relatable to your students. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter. We can look at it in so many different ways. And I think, especially as an ELA teacher, I always go back to that. Some of the stories that I see on our curriculum that were presented, and I've taught a few different places, I'm like, man, they taught this when I was in high school. and when I was in high school, it was already 60 years old. So wait, and this is still on the curriculum map now in 2020?
It's a classic.
That's a whole nother discussion. That is a whole nother discussion, right? So it's a classic. To who? That's what I would ask. To who?
Shoot.
Based on what history?
Those are the questions that need to be asked when informing who gets what curriculum. Everybody, like, why do we all even have to? Oh man, we're sidelined. I'm not even going to continue with that question. Oh my goodness. So for status quo, we have small classrooms. We have changed the curriculum, and I might add social, emotional learning is a requirement. A requirement. This is a collective trauma. Say it with me. Collective trauma. Appreciate you. And so we can't just come back to school like, hi, how are you? Good to see you. You're fine, right? Yeah, you're here. You're fine. No. We need to be addressing their emotional and social needs and equipping them with the ability to do it for themselves as well. And teachers need to be going on that journey themselves, and they need to be equipped with the way that they can do it for their students.
Again, it takes doing the work, right? It takes doing the work. I want to go back to another quote from that same Harvard Gazette article. And in it, he says, Paul Revell says, in politics, we say, never lose the opportunity of a crisis. And in this situation, we don't simply want to frantically struggle to restore the status quo, because the status quo wasn't operating at an effective level and certainly wasn't serving all of our children fairly. And I say that to say, I think that quote applies here because hopefully what comes from this pandemic is that it was a smack in the face to the fact that we were not addressing the social emotional needs of our students. And without question, we can all hopefully we all agree that when they do return to, the school in regards to physical sense, that must be addressed.
Yeah.
Even the strongest of students, even the strongest of teachers. And I think about the quotes I've seen passed around on Facebook and Instagram, check on your strong friends. Call your friends that are there for you all the time. Call them because they need it too. Because even those people that are generally strong-willed, even they've had moments of weakness and they've broken down during this quarantine. So our students are no different.
Love that. Because it's not necessarily, it's not really a matter of fortitude. This is traumatic, and to varying levels. And I love that. Check on your strong friends, check on your strong students. This is a community effort to heal. We are going to need the community, which brings me perfectly to the next quote, which says we need a paradigm shift. I think that's basically what we've been saying. Like, throw the old mindset away, out with the old, in with the new so that our goals and aspirations, which are summed up in phrases like no child left behind or every student succeeds, we can figure out how to actually build a system that has the capacity to deliver on that promise of excellence and equity in education for our students. And all means all. We've got the opportunity now, and I hope we don't rush to take advantage of it in a misguided rush to restore the status quo. This is going to take a community effort. What are some of the actions that we need the community to take? Teachers, parents, elected officials, admin, central office, whomever, to prevent the rush to restore the status quo?
We have to demand it. Our voices have to be heard. And again, I go back to E for E because that's their mission. You know, that's something that they continuously work towards, is elevating the voices of those who are not generally heard, and putting them in a position to be in front of those policymakers, to be in front of those decision makers, because they need to hear it. And like we just talked about, so often the people making the decisions are not there in the classroom, in the hallways. So they're making a decision from a distance. And I think that generally speaking, they have good intentions, or at least they like to think that they do. But
the road to hell.
Right. And I don't blame them. But at the same time, if we're not advocating and speaking up on our behalves, then we can't just expect them to know what we need without saying it. And I really look at this as a time to galvanize families. I think that this is a time that hopefully has brought families together. And I hope that, I'm not a parent just yet, but if I had children, I would have tried to use this time to learn more about my kids, because as we're in the midst of the day-to-day, rigmarole, get up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, start over again. Now I've had a little bit more time, hopefully, to sit down and find out what my students' interests are. And I say student because your child is indeed a student, and you as their current teacher, as a parent, maybe you didn't know that they had a love for drawing. Maybe you didn't know that their best learning came through video and not through reading. So those are the things you need to be able to come then and express that to, the people that are in the schools. You say, hey, why is it that all the assignments are, just copies? Why are they just paper? Where are the videos? Where's the apps to record voices? Where are the opportunities to act it out? I think that we need to be able to find different ways to express critical thinking skills.
Yeah,
that's what we're ultimately looking for, is how can this student prove that they are a critical thinker? They're able to take a situation, use some data, use some evidence, and be able to come up with a sound resolution, or at least some reasoning to why they would do or what they would do in regard to that situation. And there should be a multitude of ways to prove that.
Yes. And I love that. I love that, because the truth is parents need to remember that the P in parent stands for powerful. Parents are powerful. And I feel like they don't know sometimes how to bring their voice to the forefront. I was asked some time ago, like, what do you think needs to happen? Like, what do administration need to be thinking about, like, upon our return to school? And I said, I think that we really need to take parent voice into consideration. Like, I would love, like, when I came to school, I would get a stack of these are my students, and this is what their parents think about them. This is what their parents think they need to learn. This is what their parents think their strength is, because that is one of the most, generally speaking, the most unbiased, biased in the best way, but like, it is the best thing that we can get. The best information. It is insight. They are our partners. And I think that their voice, they need to find the way. We need to do better at telling them when city council meetings are. Like you said, we need to do better at telling them to call up the school. I love it when people are like, oh, this parent has an attitude. I was like, but did you talk to them? Like, congratulations.
Why are they really mad? Get to the root of the problem.
Thank you. Search for the root. Maybe they didn't have a good experience. Maybe they think you're going to treat them. They're coming with baggage.
Listen,
their pain.
There's a saying that I think everyone's familiar with: is hurt people, right? And the same goes for parents, right? Especially from my experience working in all Title I schools in urban education, many of the parents of my students they did not have a good experience in K through 12 public education.
Mm.
And undoubtedly, because they had a tainted experience, they're expressing that in some way, shape, or form to their child, especially if they're in the same area, in terms of the same school, sometimes same district. Many of the parents, they didn't have a connection with a teacher. They didn't feel loved and welcomed. They didn't feel like their voice was heard when they were in school. And now that they have a child, they more than likely are showing up to the school and with defense mechanisms already
Mama
activated.
bearing.
Right? Defense mechanisms already activated because they know, I know how they do at that school. I know how they do up there. And, it's our job then as educators, and it's not just the administration, the entire educational platform, we have to reach out. And like you said, those are our partners. The parents are our partners. So we need to let them know, like, it's not just me educating your child. We're all in this together because ultimately this is part of our community. And I think this pandemic has shown that we are indeed a community because what you do is going to affect me.
Yes, yes. And our elected officials, I'm asking that, you take time to listen to teacher and parent voices. Like, that is what you could do. Like, think about when you are representing us, have you made sure that you have listened enough to us to know what we want put forth? Have you taken the time? Have you shown up?
All questions that need answers.
Like, that is how I feel like we're going to prevent going back and restoring the status quo, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Because the truth is, we have to be intentional about our actions. Teachers need to be using their voice. Parents need to be using their voice, and elected officials need to be using their power to elevate them.
Hopefully, trying to find some of the solutions that have come out of the fire that has been this pandemic. Hopefully, the use of technology becomes more prevalent in engaging parents, creating videos, video blogs for one that keep them up to date with what's happening in the school. I thought of, for next year as a teacher, I would love to host some sort of virtual coffee hour with parents.
Cool.
That they can be informed about what's happening in the classroom. I can celebrate some of the students and their accolades and achievements. I can also let them know where they can help in regards to having certain discussions with their child that are going to lead to their critical thinking skills being developed. So I really hope to implement that in the next year. That way that I feel more connected with parents, because I think that that's an area of growth for me.
I agree. I love that. I love that. So if there was an action step that you think you're going to try and do to prevent the rush to restore the status quo, what would you say it is?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to start because there's so many things that come to mind that I want to change. You talked about culturally responsive teaching, curriculum, I should say. We've talked about the inequities in regards to access to technology. One of my personal missions is finding space for more Black male educators in the classroom and helping them to elevate beyond just the teacher level. Many of the Black male educators I speak with now get stuck at the para level. And our paras are needed too, but we want to encourage growth. So there's a lot that needs to be changed to avoid the status quo. I think I probably would start at the curriculum. I think I would start there because I feel like that's one of the main things that affects quite a large range of folks. And it's something that's been, in place for probably the longest of all those issues is the curriculum. We truly are using some curriculum that is, in some cases, decades, if not centuries old. And that needs to change. It just really does. I mean, it truly needs to change. I can vividly remember a conversation with my mother, and I won't give out her age. I know mom's listening. but I do recall we actually had one of the same teachers as well. One of my English teachers in high school was her English teacher, but not in that specific class. But I vividly remember having a conversation with my mother about a story that we were reading, a book that we were going over, and she was telling me the lesson as if she was in class. And I said, that's the same thing we're talking about. And I remember that from high school. The same essay question, the same text. And that's, 30 years later. And now I imagine that is still being taught, in those grade levels, and that truly needs to change. It's almost as if sometimes we look at the curriculum as if books are no longer being written, as if stories are no longer being created and published. You would think that looking at some of the curriculum that teachers are being given to provide and present to their students.
I love that. I honestly love that, because I would love for our students to return to like a supercharged, like culturally relevant curriculum. Like, reading and knowledge is power, and being able to express yourself in words and language is necessary, like to get your point across. Because so many people have excellent points, but if you cannot make them eloquently, no one will listen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is excellent, and engaging them by helping them see themselves, by bringing in windows and mirrors, that is essential. So I love that you are charging yourself with that. I think for me, I am going to use our partnership with E4E to elevate my teacher voice, and working on getting like our elected officials to really hear what teachers need, and taking our needs into consideration, and truly making decisions upon our behalf. I really want to make sure that when we return having had teacher and parent voices and student voices elevated. And I really, truly believe that prevents the rush to restore the status quo, and allows you the freedoms to teach the curriculum that you believe would benefit our students most.
To that point, first of all, I want to commend you for elevating your teacher voice, because we can't just talk about it, we have to be about it. And that's part of what we're doing here on the podcast. And it brings to me a quote by the phenomenal Rita Pearson,
Yes.
an excellent educator that most folks know. And she used to say that kids don't learn from people they don't like, right? And I think the same thing applies to the curriculum. Kids don't learn from curriculum they don't connect to, that they don't like. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. They do not connect to that curriculum. And so they are going through the motions. They're being compliant, but they're not truly connecting with it. And I think, if nothing else, we have to provide an opportunity for our students to learn about themselves. We have to.
Agreed.
What good is education if you don't know anything about yourself?
Ooh.
Well.
And a hush fell over the room. Oh my goodness.
Let me dab the sweat because I'm preaching.
Yeah. You have to know yourself. You have to know yourself. And thank you for elevating Rita Pearson's voice. We are moving into May, people. May.
Wow.
And do you know what May brings?
Hopefully good weather, but I'm hoping you're telling me something else, because I'm looking out the window. It's dreary.
I thought you were going to say flowers. Because we got the April showers.
That's true.
Oh my goodness. No, May brings us National Teachers Month.
Woo!
Woo! But people, did you know that we actually don't have National Teachers Month? That it's really just a week from May 4th to May 8th. Yep. That's all they give us. Yo, that's all they give us. Wow. That's it. And E4E, these people were like, heck to the nah, we need a whole month. A whole month. Like, literally, this was my Google search. This is what I put in, and this is what comes up. This is what comes up. E4E loves their teachers, people.
Yes,
E4E loves their teachers. So please support them by taking their survey. Please take their survey. So they want to know who you want to elevate. They are elevating our voice. They are elevating our each other, like having us support one another. We need to support them. So please take the E4E survey. It is in the chat. It is here. It is at 2020 Educator Survey. These people have given us a whole month because they believe in what we do and they know how difficult it is. They want to elevate your voice specifically right now in terms of remote learning and knowing how it's going.
Absolutely. And I'm happy that May is Teacher Appreciation Month. But also something I know my wife has heard me talk about several times is sometimes I wonder how teachers get left out of the civil servant conversation when it comes to discounts.
Oh,
I'm just being honest. I know some people are going to say, wait, why do you need a discount? But listen, I appreciate the job that police officers, firefighters do, military. I appreciate all of their efforts. I'm not taking anything away from them because they provide a valuable service to our society and our communities. However, have we not seen the valuable contribution of teachers from this pandemic where parents are now at home pulling their hair out, scratching their noggins, trying to figure out, how do I teach my student this? How do I help them with this lesson? So hopefully we can elevate teachers to a point where there are more companies that are willing to offer teachers discounts along with other civil servants. I mean, it's a shame. There are so many places that offer student discounts. Who's teaching the students? That's it. Student. I have to pull out my college ID from 5 years ago and pretend to be a student. No, I'm sorry. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Never mind.
No shame. No shame.
Don't tell on yourself. Don't tell on yourself.
Nah, please. I know so many people in the chat like, yep, did that. Listen, I'll vouch for I'm here. I'm here for it. I've done it. Guilty.
Sure, this doesn't look like I'm super senior. I'm super senior. I've been a couple years.
Are you insulting? Me now? Like, it's been hard enough, okay?
I got the loans to prove it, okay?
Right? Oh my goodness. Yes. I would actually, who do we petition for that? Like, I'm gonna start on change.org. I'm gonna be like, we should be civil servants. So look out for that petition, sign it, because that brings up a very, very good point. A very good point.
So what else do we got going on, Joe?
Oh, well, we also want your stories. So National Teacher Month is here, and we want to know, who are your favorite teachers? Who are your favorite teachers, past and present? Who are the people that touched your life, and why? Everyone has a story to be told. And here's how you can do it. You can record a soundbite. There's the link right there, Anchor, and I will make sure to put it in the post, in the chat. Or you can just email us a video. We love videos. We want to hear your voice. And the more, the better, because you could be featured on our podcast. And we would love to know what's been going on. What's good?
Indeed. I really encourage people to send in those sound bites, send in those videos. You wouldn't believe how difficult it is sometimes as a teacher to pour into a student. And oftentimes, especially, unless you're their senior year teacher, you don't generally see or get to reap the benefits of the labor that you put in with them. Seeing them graduate, seeing your students become successful adults, go on to college and start careers and begin businesses. So being able to tell those stories of your favorite teacher, who knows? I mean, it could have been 10, 20, 30 years ago. Your teacher may still hear that. And I'm sure if you are in some way in contact with any of your old teachers, reach out to them during this month. Tell them thank you. Tell them thank you for those conversations. Thank you for the motivation and inspiration. My wife and I were just talking the other day about a teacher that she had in high school that she felt really challenged her and didn't allow her to not give her best self in the classroom, no matter what she had going on. And those type of interactions, again, those connections, that's what we strive for as teachers. So please reach out to us and reach out to your teachers as well.
Yes. And as a note from the class I'm taking, the Science of Well-Being, one of the biggest things that you can boost your happiness and bring happiness to somebody else is showing gratitude. So, of course, they say write a 300 word letter of gratitude and hand deliver it. Obviously, we can't do that, but take a time to handwrite it and maybe mail it as opposed to typing it. Just that little bit of extra effort really goes a long way during these times. So that's a great suggestion, Ty. Really, go back and say thank you.
Without question.
Other suggestions, Ty, you had a big one last week. You had a really, really big one last week.
Some say I jumped out the window. Some say I didn't. I was doing a little too much.
So if you weren't here last week, our Ty the guy is doing 100K in May. He is doing
100K.
100K in May.
100K.
Woo!
Listen, I'm looking for your support, but more than your support, I'm looking for your participation.
Yes.
So join me. Many of us have put on that COVID-19, and we're not talking about the disease, we're talking about the pounds, okay? So the only way we're going to work those pounds off is challenging ourselves to be active, right? And do it in a safe way. We want to still wear our masks. We want to make sure that we're not exercising in a group, but we want to get out there, and I am committing to doing 100K in May. For those who are not the math whizzes that I am not either, that's 62 miles, 62 and a little change in miles. So that's about, 2 miles a day, right? About 2 miles a day. There's 31 days in May. We can do this. So I encourage you, download the Map My Run app. It's by Under Armour. It's part of the reason why I got this on right here. All right. So a little shout out to them, in case you want to drop a little sponsorship. And download the Map My Run challenge and send us a notification that you did so, and we will add you to the 100K in May challenge. That way we can all see each other's progress. We can root each other on, cheer each other on, and hold each other accountable, right? Because we all know that doing things in a partnership, in groups, in cohorts, is so much more, we're more successful that way than doing things on our own.
It's way more fun.
That too.
If fun matters.
And listen, I'm going to be giving people a little nudge. I sent you a private message. Hey, it's been 3 days. I don't see any miles. I don't see any miles.
You about to run 6 miles? You running that 5K one time? Oh no, I guess that's a 10K. You running that 10K one time? Go ahead.
Listen, I have to, if you've been following us, last week we talked about, Joe has, expensive taste. She likes Talenti. I'm getting that on sale Ben and Jerry's. I haven't bought any this week. So I'm gearing up. I'm gearing up in preparation for this run. I got my Hampton hoodie on because it's a little chilly outside. Shout out to the real HU. And I got my Under Armour band, and I am ready to rock. So tomorrow, first day tomorrow, woo! I'm out there.
I am pumped. And thank you, Tyrell, for inviting all of us to join you, because I'm really excited. Yeah, because honestly, had you not come up with the idea, there's no way I was running. Zero. Look, zero. I think
the other thing we talked about though too is, exercising is great for your mental health. So even if you can't run, if you walk, it'll be just as beneficial. And especially on the days where the sunlight is out, that sun is natural in terms of helping with any level of depression. So get out there, be active. And again, do it in a safe way. Carry your hand sanitizer, wear your mask, but we will be running 100K in May.
Yes, absolutely. And for those, being a special needs teacher, it's just in my blood. I got to give people options so that everybody has access. So if you're like me and you download the app because you got a friend, this guy, but don't want to do it via app, you can do it the old-fashioned paper way. And we have a bunch of different options for you too, just in case running's just not your thing or you're not going outside. So these are some options. And if you want to see them and sign up, there you go. You have the link, because like Ty said, we are participating. We are building up our mental health. And that is the point more than anything. So we've decided we're doing 100K in May. But if you decide something else, that's okay.
I see what you did right there.
Appreciate you. Oh my goodness. Well, I think that's all the announcements that we've got.
Man, we gave you guys a lot of valuable information today. Do us a favor also, if you haven't told someone, tell a friend to tell a friend about the 2B podcast, where we hope that you are being informed, educated, and you're laughing a little bit with us each and every week. We will be changing the time come next week, and we'll keep you posted on that, but we'll still be coming to you live and direct. Don't you worry.
Don't you worry. And until then, remember
to be good to yourself,
to be true to yourself,
to educate yourself.
Bye. Peace.